What is the most shocking thing someone confessed while on their deathbed? My mother-in-law worked at a nursing home, so she had seen death. But one stuck with her. A patient knew he or she was near death and called out for anyone to listen. She listened. The patient said that when they were young, their father had been out drinking with some friends, and on the way home he had hit a little girl. Gave very specific details about where and when it happened. The girl was maybe 3 years old. Her father and his friends buried the little girl under the porch steps and never spoke of it again. The person had lived with the guilt of keeping it a secret and felt horrible that the little girl's family would never know what had happened. They had to let someone else know. Holy shit, the closure that girl's family never received. That's a lifetime of torture right there. Was the child ever recovered? No, the patient didn't disclose their childhood address. Plus, it happened so long ago that the highway where it occurred was a dirt road. And of course, the patient could have had a degenerative disease like dementia or Alzheimer's, so it's hard to know the validity of their claims. I have a good and a bad story for this thread. I'll start with the good. It's not exactly on the deathbed, but as close as she was able to at the time. My aunt had cancer. She knew she was going to die, and she knew it would probably be in less than a week. She couldn't eat and drinking was hard. She wanted to be sedated heavily, kept asleep permanently, essentially, for the last few days, because this whole dying thing sucks and I've had more than enough. So fair enough, a doctor is called up, a plan is made and carried out. The last thing my aunt said before going under for the rest of her life was, I see the stars, they're sweet and run carefree. Gather them up. And that's when she went under. She died 3 days later. Nobody knows what she meant. But somehow, those last words fit her, so my uncle, her husband, got them tattooed on his chest, over his heart. The bad, my other uncle had been in a car accident. It was bad. In the ambulance on the way to the hospital, he said, "Tell my wife that Wendy is my daughter and I love her," name changed for privacy. He died a few minutes later because of internal bleeding. Wendy was the neighbor's then 5-year-old child. That caused a huge shitstorm, I can tell you. How did that story end? The neighbors divorced. Otherwise, mostly arguing. Wendy lives with her mother, and the mother's ex-husband is legally her father. My grandma confessed to my mom when she thought she was dying, she got better, that she tried to coat hanger abort her. Obviously it was unsuccessful. My grandma was a religious woman, and decided that God wanted her to have this baby, and treated my mom like her favorite child. This messed my mom up for a while, and it was even more awkward when my grandma surprisingly got better. After grandma died for real, my mom eventually made peace with it. After she was born, grandma never treated her like she was unwanted, so mom understood she was in a vulnerable place at the time. Mom was the 7th child in a poor family. Yay, the time before birth control. People have this romantic image of two people confirming and trying for a child, and that happens, but not always. Around 45% of pregnancies in the US are unplanned apparently. Not from experience, but it must be daunting to have a child, and I'd wager abortion crosses most minds. It's just about what the person has access to and how long it takes for them to make a solid decision. The actions of a panicked individual before birth do not have anything to do with the child, but rather the responsibilities and self-insecurities of raising it. I'm a medical student, and I had a female patient who was new to our practice who was HIV positive. I needed to ask her how she got the virus, i.e. sexual or for drugs. She tells me it was sexually transmitted, and the only reason she got tested was because her partner of 3 years' last words to her as he was dying in hospice was, I'm sorry, I wanted to tell you, forgive me." Heavy stuff. Edit, to be clear, he died of cancer and not of AIDS. Some people believe it was AIDS that killed him, and my patient should have already known at this point. This was not the case. Another edit, she has been positive for 20 years, no symptoms, and is undetectable. All her number are great. Medicine has come a long way, and HIV does not equal a death sentence in most patients. My dad was adopted from a woman who went to my grandparents' church and got pregnant out of wedlock. My grandpa confessed on his deathbed that he had actually had an affair with that woman, and he was my dad's real father, which was why he suggested adopting him in the first place. I'm not supporting knowingly cheating, but I can't imagine the heartbreak I would feel as the biological mother, watching my child grow up with his father and calling the woman I was second to mother, being known as the sinner who got knocked up by some random, while the man who was having an affair came out of it as the generous Samaritan. My time to shine. I worked at a hospital in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, a small town near Munich, for the last 14 years. My job there is not fancy at all. I move people around, throw the trash out, and occasionally I take care of some handy-like work, fix a leaking shower head and stuff like that. As you can imagine, I get to see a lot of patients that come and go. Some of them pass away, such is life, I guess. I remember a few instances of people confessing to me their biggest regrets. Here are some examples. An old Polish woman told me that she regretted not fucking Hitler when she had the chance. Her words. I wanted to ask her about more context, but I was afraid to be honest. Another notable example was an old truck driver that used to work for an East Germany company. He told me that he once run over some kids with his truck and was too afraid to stop and check if they were okay. Once another Polish lady told me that she used to be a prostitute during Second World War and that she slept with very high up people in the government. She told me that she did not regret that part of her life, but that she could not tell anyone, and that was a heavy emotional drag. She also told me that she aborted more than 5 babies during that time. My mother died when I was 11 of stage 4 cancer. While she was on hospice at home, my grandmother, on my dad's side, was standing by the bed. She woke up, heavily medicated, pointed and said, "What are you doing here? I never liked you." Not especially shocking but hilarious. It sounds heartless, but my grandmother gave my mom hell when she was alive. My other grandmother, Mom's mom, tried to hold in laughter as she told her she taught her better than that. Ha, yay, my grandma said some pretty funny stuff while she was on painkillers after brain surgery. My aunt jokingly asked her who her favorite child is, and my grandma said and pointed at my mom without missing a beat. Then she told my aunt that the purse she gifted her for her b-day was hideous and that no body needs that many zippers. She made some fairly inappropriate remarks to the doctor as well. She was really cracking herself up. By the end of the first day, we'd all stopped asking her questions that we didn't want to know the answer to, and everyone was wishing they had a bit of whatever she was on to get through the rest of the week. My grandmother was super religious my whole life, always going to church and doing right by her community. In her last hours, she said she really did not believe in God and wished she had not wasted all that time in her life doing what she thought others wanted her to do. It was pretty crazy for her husband, my dad, and aunt to hear her say that. My mom's side of the family started when my grandfather raped my grandmother as a teenager in the late 30s, early 40s, and she got pregnant. Because of social stigma, she spent her life married to, cooking for, cleaning for, her rapist. My dad's side of the family started when my grandfather and the babysitter, my grandmother, ran away with the baby, the money, and some of the furniture too. Both were deathbed confessions by grandparents. Related to me by my mother before her passing, my great-uncle admitted that he had killed his first wife by beating her to death with a bowling ball because he found her molesting their neighbor's son when he was 5 years old. This was when he lived in Ireland, and a few years later he moved to America, met another woman, and lived his life happily, had a number of kids and grandkids. It put most of the family into shock, as my great-uncle was one of the most non-violent people you would ever meet. No explanation on how he got away with it, or any more than that. He died like 3 minutes later. Shook my family up for a while. Germany, post-World War II. Ruth is a young German, Felicienne, a French soldier, falls head over heels, brought many thoughtful gifts, such as a big juicy ham for her family. They marry. His family and friends are in the south of France, but they stay in Germany. He now goes by the name Felix. They stay together, through several miscarriages, infertility. They never have children. Ruth dies first, around 2010. On her deathbed she tells him, "You know, Felix, I always liked you, but I never loved you." My mom told me about the death of her father, my grandfather, and his last words to her. She said he was on his deathbed and it was obvious he was nearing the end. He motioned her over to tell her something. She went over, leaned in close, expecting some declaration of his love for her or some deeply insightful. He said the good family silverware is hidden in the ventilation system about 15 feet out from the furnace. She looked at him like he was crazy. He said, "What? We travel a lot and that's where I hid it. That shit's expensive." He died the next morning. Me and all of my cousins were gathered around my grandfather's hospice bed as he lay dying. Each and every one of my cousins, there's a lot of us, gave him a kiss and tried to talk to him / said they loved him, etc., but he wouldn't respond to any of them, just stared. Until I came up. I sat on the edge of his bed, holding his hand. Everyone was watching us. He looked at me and said, "I don't like Mexican food." And that was it. "You're not Mexican, are you?" "Sorry, I should have clarified. We are not Mexican." I have a great aunt that passed away when I was 17. Just before she did, my older brother confessed to her that I was gay. She called me in and explained how our family has been through so much and that she was willing to totally accept me for who I am. I think that is great of her to be that open-minded. Only one problem: I'm not gay. She never believed me because my brother had confessed it. What? Was your brother hiding and giggling in the corner with a camcorder or something? What the hell? No camcorder back then, but lots of high-pitched giggles. Shortly after he was diagnosed as suffering from the final stages of heart failure, a few weeks before he died, my grandfather told me several stories about World War II that changed my view of him and of war in general. Now, before I start, I should tell you that my grandfather was one of the kindest men you'd ever meet. Always friendly, never drank, the kind of guy who gave the shirt off his back to those who needed it and handed out the biggest candy bars in town on Halloween. Everyone loved him. Shortly after D-Day, my grandfather was part of a 12-man rifle squad fighting in northern France. As his unit entered a seemingly abandoned village, they were ambushed by a squad of Germans and the unit was torn apart. They won, but by the end of the fight only 3 of the Americans were still alive, and one of them was badly wounded. The squad leader and his assistant were dead. The 2 unwounded soldiers swept the battle scene and hauled 3 badly wounded German Wehrmacht soldiers into the middle of the street. My grandfather looked at the other American soldier, said no prisoners, and cut the throat of one of the Germans right there. He said he almost puked because there was way more blood than he was expecting. His partner lifted his rifle to shoot the other 2, but my grandfather stopped them. He said that there may have been other German soldiers nearby and didn't want the gunfire attracting them. So they dragged the other 2 into the shallow ditch on the side of the road, with about 6 inches of water in it, and stood on the German soldiers' heads until they drowned. After that, he said he hated Germans. He confessed to a number of war crimes, including shooting German civilians and killing German soldiers who were trying to surrender, apparently a not uncommon occurrence. But the worst? He told me that he only felt guilty about one thing he'd done. In early 1945, his new squad was going through a small German village when he and a couple of other guys kicked in the door to a small house. Inside was a small old German woman in a wheelchair, who immediately started screaming and cursing at them in perfect English. My grandfather kicked her wheelchair over, rolled it out the door, and then knocked an oil lamp over as he left the house with his partners. She burned to death. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "That was too cruel. She was an old woman. I should have just shot her. Damn." I didn't witness this personally as it was between my grandfather and his father. My great-grandfather was not a nice man. He beat his children. One time he beat his daughter with a table leg, and I am assuming did the same to his wife. Anyway, she left him and the kids behind. This was the 30s and I am assuming that he didn't allow her to take the kids with her, and it's not like women's rights were great back then. My grandfather left home at 8 years old and fended for himself for his entire life. On his deathbed, nasty grandpa told the boys that he had a bunch of money stashed on the old property, and if they went to see him, he would tell them where it was. No one went. Edit for clarity, nasty grandpa was my great-grandfather. I did some work in a nursing home. Helped with a guy that had a bad stroke, could hardly speak, some trouble moving around. To speed up the story, a nurse and I had some trouble with him, and later I said that stroke really made him mean. She replied, "Not really. I grew down the street from him and he was always a miserable man. He was always drinking and abusive to his wife and kids. His kids came to our house all the time and stayed, and my folks let them because he was so awful to them. Later he had that stroke and they dumped him here. They never come to see him, not even at Christmas or his birthday. If we need them for something, they come in and see us and don't go to his room or look for him. They just do what needs to be done and leave." My grandpa told my dad he loved him for the first time when he was dying from cancer. Grandpa was a drunk all throughout my dad's childhood and had a strained relationship with the family. So this was pretty surprising to hear from him. My grandpa was a pretty gruff man. Not mean to me, but never talked about love and not very affectionate. He was funny and I loved him, just not the touchy-feely type. I lived in the country but Grandpa lived in town. I was getting ready for a high school dance at his house one night and putting on some makeup. He told me I was beautiful and didn't need to wear any makeup. He'd never said anything remotely like that before, so I was very surprised. He died of a heart attack the next day. So not really on his deathbed that he knew, but close. My dad had Alzheimer's and ended up in a secure ward. He was blind and almost deaf. I was visiting him one day. He didn't know who I was, but he started talking about me. He said I had done better than him in life and that he was proud of me. He was a quiet man IRL and never told me that when I was growing up. Looking back, he did things that my dumb ass never realized were for me. Like, When he retired, his colleagues asked what he'd like as a present. He chose a scientific calculator. This was back in the 1970s. He had no use for it. He gave it to me for university. I thought he was just passing it on, not realizing that he'd asked for it with me in mind. My mom was from China, though we are now happily residing in an European country. We went back to China for my grandmother's last few weeks as she was dying from terminal cancer. On my grandma's last days, she requested that mom stay with her alone, and it was only then she revealed that my mom wasn't her biological kid. My grandma confessed that she has bought my mom from a child trafficking ring, which was common in China, because she had tried for many years and still couldn't get pregnant. My mother cried a lot, not only for the unimaginable pain that her biological parents likely went through in losing a baby, but also for the fact that my grandparents have went beyond to treat my mom as their little princess. They literally did treat my mom as their own. They were never abusive and only gave her the very best in life. They even willingly send my mom to the US for university education even though they aren't rich by any means. Wow, I can't even begin to imagine how hard that would have been for your mom to process. My heart goes out to her. I wish that there was a way for her biological parents to know that she is okay. My mom actually did consider looking for her biological parents. But after so many decades, the probability of success is close to zero. Who knows if her biological parents are still alive? Plus, even if my mom successfully found her biological parents, it's going to be extremely awkward interacting with someone you are supposed to love with all your heart but doesn't, because you have never lived together with them during your formative years to develop the special bond. Also, like someone else mentioned, no one knows whether my mom was kidnapped or sold by her biological parents. Logically speaking, the latter might be more probable because poor couples tend to sell their girls rather than boys. It would be kind of weird if my mom goes looking for parents who didn't want her in the first place. However, my mom gives the benefit of the doubt and assumes that she was taken away from her parents, because resentment is pointless and painful.